When we talk about the greatness of Nikola Jokic, the first thing that tends to come up is his passing. Deservedly so, because he's a top 2 passer in NBA history, but in his latest playoff masterpiece against the Timberwolves, Jokic made one thing abundantly clear. As much as he elevates his teammates with his brilliant passing, you cannot try to make him a scorer because he is the best scorer on the planet. This is a take I've had for some time, but it's often met with resistance, primarily because Jokic doesn't score at the same regular season volume as the rest of the league's best. But raw volume, especially in the regular season, is ultimately not the most important measure of scoring. Jerry Stackhouse averaged 30 points per game in 2001 on 40% shooting. Was he a top 3 scorer on the planet? Of course not. The guy just took an obscene amount of shots. A number of things can influence your scoring volume beyond your pure scoring ability. The caliber and skill sets of your surrounding personnel and your individual play style will obviously impact how many shots you take. To me, the best scorer in the league is the player who, when he decides to score, is the most impossible to stop. And that is Nikola Jokic. This was on full display in Game 5 against Minnesota, when the 3-time MVP made history, becoming the first player in any game, regular season or playoffs, to post 40 points and 13 assists with 0 turnovers on 68% shooting. The man played a perfect basketball game, but his scoring was the highlight. Jokic's scoring foundation is his dominant post game, which he went to repeatedly in Game 5. When he had a significant size advantage, Jokic easily sealed off smaller defenders, including Naz Reid, and used his exceptionally soft hands to catch and finish. But he did most of his damage against 4-time Defensive Player of the Year Rudy Gobert. Minnesota decided not to send help on that matchup for most of this game. These soft digs are not going to bother him, and Jokic is just too strong for any of the league's best defenders to challenge physically as he gets deep position, then hits a beautiful lefty hook. But along with his overwhelming strength, Jokic possesses the most complete mastery of fakes and footwork out of the post in the league today. Here, he bulldozes Gobert downhill, then goes into his chest, fakes the turnaround, fakes the spin back to his right, and even though Gobert mostly stays with him and has a 7'9" wingspan, Jokic's paint touch is the best in league history, so it falls anyway. So if you leave him on an island, Jokic will often beat perfect defense. The half spin gets him a bit of a step here, but Rudy recovers and is hanging in physically, and Jokic still manages to swoop around and rain a well-contested hook. There's just no stopping that. So because Jokic is impossible for anyone to guard one-on-one, Minnesota has often put Gobert on Aaron Gordon and deployed him as a roamer, trusting that Cat or Naz Reid is big and strong enough to hold up as Jokic's primary post defender. This is not an issue of Gobert fearing the matchup, as some have tried to frame it. The Lakers have often deployed Anthony Davis as a roamer versus Jokic too. These teams just know that nobody is going to stop Jokic in single coverage, so they figure they're better off using their elite defensive big, whose best trait is rim protection, as a full-time helper who can help on Jokic and deter all Denver drives and cuts. Within this game, Gobert made several excellent plays as a roamer. On consecutive possessions to start the second half, Jokic gets downhill, but is deterred from a shot attempt by Gobert's presence, who then made excellent recoveries to challenge Gordon and save a couple of buckets. So after that, Jokic said, "Screw it, I don't care that you're the depoy, nobody can guard me in single coverage, and I'm not gonna let you do your thing as a roamer." So he started hunting Gobert in single coverage, as Gordon screens from here to force the switch, and Jokic again puts on a post clinic. He fakes the spin, then the turnaround, then spins back, and even with Gobert there, puts this hook high off the glass. Again, nothing any defender alive can do there. Here, Jokic screens for Gordon to force the switch, gets deep position, and keeps it straightforward this time, spinning off to put this lefty finish high off the glass with expert touch. That touch is the reason Jokic is so truly unstoppable. When he touches the ball anywhere in the paint, all he needs is a sliver of space to score with layup efficiency. Since the start of last season, Jokic has shot 65% on floaters, 63% on hook shots, and 59% on turnaround jumpers. He has, by far, the best paint touch we've ever seen. So now, think about guarding that, just from a scoring perspective, not including what he can do as a passer. He is 285 pounds and leverages his weight on backdowns more effectively than any player in the league, so he can go through you. Then, he has every fake in his bag. Shoulder fakes, fake and half spins, convincing up fakes. He can effortlessly pirouette, pivoting 3 or 4 times with perfect smoothness. And all of these fakes and moves are more lethal because he has everything in his bag. Lefty or righty hooks, turnarounds over either shoulder, the lethal spin move. And whatever option he ultimately chooses, he can make at a 60% clip or better. I know the inclination for many is to make this last game an anti-Gobert thing, but he was an 89th percentile post defender this year and an 87th percentile isolation defender. He allowed just 0.74 points per possession across those two play types this regular season, an outstanding number. And Nikola Jokic went 8 of 9 against him in Game 5. Who does that say more about? Jokic does this to all the league's best defenders. He's done it to Bam and AD over the last 2 postseasons, and with a couple of adjustments to deal with Wemby's unprecedented length, he dominated him this regular season. So don't make it about Rudy. Nobody can do anything with Jokic. He gets what he wants in the paint. So when we discuss his claim as the best scorer alive, consider this. Does anybody else in the league today have that sort of automatic, consistent one-on-one offense regardless of matchup? Luka relies heavily on his pull-up jumpers, which are more volatile, and he's been cold there these playoffs, which gives him a much lower floor. Embiid has consistently struggled as a pure shot maker in the postseason. SGA is a mid-range master, which is extremely valuable in the playoffs, but Jokic's shot quality is higher because he wins the strength battle so convincingly in the more physical playoffs and has even better touch. Giannis's lack of half-court skill and touch shot making has been an issue in the playoffs, particularly in the clutch when it's really hard to get all the way to the rim and when he's matched up with a big athletic defender like Bam Adebayo, who he can't overwhelm physically. The low Jalen Brunson carries is amazing, but his size and athletic limitations make it so his shot diet is more difficult and he's therefore less efficient. His supporting cast isn't helping there right now, but keep in mind, Jokic maintained elite efficiency in back-to-back postseasons without Murray on the floor, in large part because he has such physical advantages. And he always has a big efficiency advantage over Brunson, not just in these playoffs. So to answer the earlier question, no, nobody else can just generate a 60% shot at will like Jokic can. And although Jokic's post dominance is the reason I consider him the best scorer alive, he's extremely versatile. Because he makes 65% of his floaters and is a career 40% playoff 3-point shooter, he's exceedingly difficult to guard as a roller or popper. He also scores with 69th percentile efficiency as a pick and roll ball handler, which he turned to a handful of times in Game 5, often rejecting the screen to get a step going downhill. Look at him take this handoff and instead of flowing into an action with Murray, spin back and finish over Gobert with the foul in that hilariously soft touch. He's also a very effective tricky cutter. Look at him fake the screen before slipping past Cat. He consistently catches defenders sleeping, and he's an excellent mid-range shooter, comfortable curling off screens. He's not just a post-up machine, he does everything at a high level. And to pair with the skill set, Jokic's playoff scoring resume is the best in basketball over the last 4 years since he reached his MVP level. By the way, I'm only including numbers for players with at least 25 playoff games played over those 4 years here, so we have a decent sample size. Shout out to guys like Ant and Kawhi who have balled as playoff scorers, but over significantly smaller samples. So, I said earlier that volume is not the most important measure of scoring, but it does of course matter. It's just not Jokic's play style to over-assert himself as a scorer, especially in the regular season, because he's a naturally selfless player. In the playoffs though, Jokic consistently becomes more aggressive so that only a few players exceed him in volume by a slight margin. But those who do all trail him in efficiency, Luka and Giannis by a wide margin, falling closer to league average efficiency while Jokic stays elite. And the same goes for Jalen Brunson when we include his numbers just from the last 2 years in New York. And KD's position here is helped quite a bit by an outstanding 2021 run that was quite some time ago now. Since then, his lack of rim pressure and struggles with physical defense as an aging superstar have become more apparent. Playoff sample sizes are small, and of course, players change over 4 years, so these numbers are not the be-all, end-all, but the point is that since he reached an MVP level, nobody has been more consistently dominant as a scorer, blending elite volume and efficiency, then Jokic in the playoffs. And it's the playoffs that test your true mettle as a scorer. This is when the game is most physical, when foul grifting is not rewarded, when great defenses are working to take your strengths away, and Jokic has been the best in the league there. His combination of strength, pure shot making, and versatility is just undeniable, and it's not a coincidence that he consistently rises in the playoffs while some other guys consistently fall. When the Suns tried to make Jokic a scorer last year, he gave them 53 points and 11 assists on 74% true shooting, and Denver produced an offensive rating of 133. When Minnesota tried it, Jokic played perhaps his best game ever. There is no answer to the problems he poses. Only 3 players have ever even made an argument for best scorer and passer in the league simultaneously: Oscar Robertson, LeBron James, and now Jokic. It is a special title to hold and another point in his case for being the best offensive player ever. When the stage gets bigger, Jokic only gets better. Challenge him with the best defense we've seen in years, specifically built to stop him, and when it matters most, he will reach his absolute peak. Push him to destroy the Defensive Player of the Year as a scorer, and he will gladly oblige. This is a pantheon player who simply won't be denied, and it is something to behold.